City today, of course, here in Corpus Christi, released a list of 6 finalists for city manager of Corpus Christi. Following a special meeting, the names collected by a search firm were announced today. They are James Deneen, who's been working in Volusia County, Florida. Harry Black, who comes from Cincinnati, Ohio. Keith Selman, who is the current interim city manager. Simon Farbrother, who lives in Edmonton, Alberta. Peter Zanoni, who comes from San Antonio, and Lee Feldman, who's been working in Fort Lauderdale. Mayor Joe McComb says the delay in releasing the names was one candidate feared of jeopardizing his current position.
They're fine where they are, but they didn't want to jeopardize that in the event. Yeah, they made the semis, but they didn't make the finals, or they weren't the final. Then that might put them in jeopardy where they are, and they didn't want to take that risk. And so we did lose one candidate.
The mayor says the search firm will present information on all 6 candidates, and the council will decide who they want to interview. McComb tells us there's no target date for a new city manager, but they hope to select one next month.